along our southern border. At the beginning of the year in 2021, I formed the Texas Legal Defense Task Force with the simple objective of protecting Texas state's lands. Our agency manages 13 million acres, including right here where we stand today, where we manage close to 3,100 acres. Our tenant is also here, a farmer who is timely paid his leases and has paid his taxes and is running his business, but because of the change in policy in Washington, D.C., his business has been destroyed. And so this morning, on behalf of the people of Texas, I've instructed my agency to file a lawsuit against President Joe Biden and also Secretary Mayorkas of the Department of Homeland Security. The issue here is very simple, that no agency and no individual is above the law. Our Constitution is very clear in terms of the separation of powers. For 4 years, Congress appropriated $5 billion for the construction of nearly 750 miles of border wall on our southern border, including here in Texas. And in each year, the Congress signed that legislation into law. But 4 years after the first funding was signed into law, Joe Biden and Secretary Mayorkas have refused to spend those dollars and to finish the construction. As you can see behind me, parts of the wall remain unfinished and lying horizontally without any future of being constructed. This is wrong, it's illegal, and it's unconstitutional. As a presidential candidate, Joe Biden told us that he would not build another foot of wall, and one of his first acts of office was declaring that he would stop construction on all border wall projects and preventing the funds that were duly appropriated by Congress to flow to this construction project. In addition, the Department of Homeland Security froze all of its accounts and announced plans that it would divert dollars away from this project as well. And now the Biden administration has announced that they will use these dollars to pay for termination fees to wind down the construction affairs. So to be clear, we're utilizing dollars that were appropriated for the wall to not be spent for not constructing the wall. So the Constitution says that the president and an executive or agency cannot ignore the will of the people as appropriated through Congress. Never has and never will, and the construction strictly instructs the president to faithfully execute the laws that the Congress passes. That means that the president has really only two choices: either follow the law or see your day in court. And that's why we, on behalf of the people of Texas, will be bringing him to court. We're going to do so because it's the right thing to do. We're doing so because our office needs to stand and fight for the school children that we represent. So today we stand on 3,100 acres, a stretch of land on our southern border, and the land is leased to a Mr. Wilkins. The leasing revenue that comes from Mr. Wilkins goes to the schoolhouses of Texas. And unfortunately, because of the skyrocketing amount of illegal immigration, which includes human trafficking and drug smugglers that have placed pressure on Mr. Wilkins' business, we've seen a detrimental value to the leasing of this land. Our courageous Border Patrol officials have seized over 3,200 pounds of fentanyl and have encountered over 175,000 illegal immigrants in this month alone. And in recent months, we've seen that the federal government has reported the largest surge of illegal immigration in modern American history in the last 20 years. The farmers that are represented here, in addition to others throughout the region, have faced an inordinate amount of trespassing, including on this GLO ranch as well, where equipment is stolen, trespassing occurring, and sometimes violence as well. Not only does it put families, but farmers and ranchers in immediate risk and prevents their ability to operate their businesses, as is the case with Mr. Wilkins. Our brave Border Patrol agents are also keeping the watch every single day and night, encountering an inordinate amount of threat that they have not seen in recent times. And so on behalf of the school children of Texas, on behalf of the taxpayers of Texas, we're asking the federal court in the Southern District of Texas to declare relief for the state of Texas, for our tenant as well, to declare the actions of President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas as illegal, as unconstitutional, and unjustified. We want to see the border wall project continue to keep our community safe here in the Rio Grande Valley. And every day in Texas schools, where the funds that we provide resources to, we teach our children that no person, no individual is above the law. And through this lawsuit, we will have a chance to teach this very basic civic lesson to President Biden himself. President Biden was very clear in his campaign when he talked to the people of Texas saying he would not build another foot of wall. So I want to be clear to Mr. Biden this morning. We will see you in court. With that, I will turn it over to Hector Garza, who will give us a status update on our southern border, and really appreciate Hector joining us in the National Border Patrol Council.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning. My name is Hector Garza, and I serve as the Vice President for the National Border Patrol Council, and I work here in South Texas. Commissioner, thank you very much for having me here today. It's an honor to stand by your side on behalf of the men and women of the National Border Patrol Council. And thank you, Commissioner, for fighting for the border wall and fighting for the safety and the security of all Texans and Americans. Thank you for that, Commissioner. As a border security professional, the border wall has a significant meaning to me. It means having safer communities and for our families, for our neighbors, and for our friends. It also means that our fellow law enforcement officers will be able to do their jobs much more safer in very dangerous conditions in this type of terrain. It also is the difference between apprehending dangerous narcotics along the border or having them enter undetected and into the hands of our children. It means apprehending serious offenders and criminals with convictions like sexual assault, robbery, and kidnapping, or allowing them to enter the United States. We have some sectors like the Laredo sector that we have seen an over 1,000% increase in the apprehensions of criminal aliens. Those are aliens with serious criminal convictions. Do we need a border wall from all the way from California to Brownsville, Texas? No, we don't. But do we need a border wall in strategic locations to be able to do our jobs and keep Americans safe? Yes, we do. We also need boots on the ground. And we also need the latest detection technology along the border so we can keep the American public safe. Do we need the border wall that was appropriated by Congress and the border wall that the federal government has already spent so much money on to be able to keep us safe? Yes, we do. Commissioner, thank you for your hard work, your efforts, and this lawsuit will help keep Americans safe and Texans safe. So thank you for your hard work, sir.
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Yes, sir. We'll open the floor to your questions.
I wonder if you can kind of give us a little overview of what the intent of the lawsuit is, and if you can give it both in English and in Spanish, that would be lovely.
So this lawsuit is being filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas, and it's a very simple separation of power case where under our Constitution, under Article 1, our Congress has the power of the purse. And when they pass a law under the Article 2 powers appropriated to the executive, or the President of the United States, they have to faithfully execute that law. And so there were 4 budgets passed that appropriated $5 billion for the construction or the rehabilitation or the reconstruction of 750 miles of wall along our southern border. And in 2019, part of that appropriation, about $1 billion, was appropriated for the Rio Grande Valley. And part of that appropriation would have completed 2 miles that would have stretched through this acreage that we stand on today. This acreage is about 3,100 acres that's owned by the people of Texas. And we signed a lease over the course of about 20 years with a farmer here, Mr. Wilkins. And those leasing revenues come to the public schools of Texas. So our beneficiaries are the school children that are learning every single day in Texas schoolhouses. And that's why we're bringing this suit, is to not only help secure communities in Texas, but to protect the state of Texas acreage, and also to promote good policy and remind federal leadership in Washington, D.C. that they must follow the law. Esta demanda está acerca de la división del poder en nuestro gobierno nacional. Así que abajo del artículo 1 de la Constitución, el presidente tiene que seguir las reglas del Congreso. El Congreso ha mandado más de $5 billones a través de 4 años durante el tiempo de Trump. Así que estos fondos pueden asegurar las comunidades en el sur de Texas. incluido esta comunidad. Así que vamos a mandar esa demanda en el corte aquí en Texas, in the Southern District of the U.S. Courthouse, y estamos esperando una victoria en el corte.
Aside from the lawsuit and what you hope it, if you are successful in this lawsuit, how successful do you think it's going to be in creating a wall in Stark County, which has been a good place to demonstrate how difficult and how challenging it is to work with all of the owners along the border? Under the Bush administration and under the Trump administration, it was a goal, and yet there's only 3 miles or so, in Stark County. How do you think those challenges will be overcome this time?
Well, it definitely is a complicated and challenging prospect to look at construction of 750 miles, whether it be rehab or reconstruct. As Land Commissioner of Texas, I can focus on the acreage that I manage. And the state of Texas manages about 200,000 acres at or near the border. And Governor Abbott was absolutely right in implementing an executive order commissioning agencies like mine to look at every legal avenue possible available to us. So we've reached out to the White House and relevant authorities at DHS to find a solution, because I only want to file lawsuits if it's going to benefit and we're going to win. And so we've developed evidence, and you'll find that in our lawsuit, where we see on average about 1,500 migrants on a monthly basis, which have destroyed the crops in this farm. We've seen trespassing and property violation as well. So all to say that we want to be a partner with the governor. We want to work with President Biden to find a sensible solution, but we still have north of about $1.3 billion that is unspent to finish the construction wall. As Hector had said, the wall is not the only aspect to which we can create a sense of order and decency to the legal immigration process in our country. That's probably a little above my pay grade as land commissioner, because my focus is on our acreage, the revenues that we generate to schoolhouses. We're proud of the fact that we generate on average about $1 billion a year for public schools in Texas, but that's being affected by the illegal immigration crisis. So I just know that the federal government needs to follow through with the commitment, and this lawsuit doesn't contest President Biden's disagreement. If he wants to secure the border or decide he doesn't want to secure the border, he's entitled to that opinion. But what he is not entitled to under the Constitution is to not spend the money and not follow the law that the Congress passed in 4 years before his time.
Is this lawsuit part of the larger plans of the governor to build a wall in Texas? And if so, could you also give us an update on how those plans are coming along?
I don't have any additional intelligence that I can share with you today, but the governor did announce last week that Texas Facilities Commission will be beginning the contracting process, and we know through our relationships over at the Texas Facilities Commission that they are beginning to interview a lot of the same companies that were constructing the wall on a prior basis. We have contributed, and I announced an executive order where the 200,000 acres that are at or near border areas along the entirety of the Texas southern border will be contributed. And as you alluded to in your first question, land is arguably more expensive than the actual wall itself and the labor it is to construct it. So we hope to reduce the cost of the proposal that the governor has on the table, and he wants to kickstart that proposal with $250 million. There is of state money, and then there will be additional private contributions that come forward along with our state acreage contribution. This lawsuit is really focused on this acreage, this 3,100 acres, but also more importantly, a understanding of the Constitution that the president needs to follow the laws and expend the rest of those dollars that were appropriated to finish the wall and help our border patrol.
I had a question for Mr. Garza. How are you, sir?
Hello, Pedro.
I wanted to ask you first how is the situation at the border? We hear that only in the RGB sector, 271,000 people have been apprehended in the last fiscal year. The numbers are going pretty high, over 400% increase. What is the morale of the agents as they see this reality, and how are you guys coping with this increased number?
So as you mentioned, Pedro, the apprehensions in the Border Patrol have gone up. As a matter of fact, if you look at the numbers from February of this year to May of this year, in just 4 months, the Border Patrol encountered over 600,000 apprehensions at the southern border. If you compare those numbers to last year, during the same time period in 4 months, we saw about 98,000 apprehensions. That means that we've seen an increase by a factor of 6. That's it. That's a big increase. Now, as far as the morale of our Border Patrol agents, it's been very difficult. When you are assigned to do a job to protect the border, and when you're not given the resources to be able to do your job, it brings morale down. What that means is that by not building the border wall, that means that our Border Patrol agents will be conducting their jobs in higher risk areas. That means that they'll be subject to more attacks by cartel members, by drug dealers, and by these criminal aliens that have very serious criminal records. I'm not sure how much longer we can continue with this morale if we don't get the proper resources. And again, we ask for the construction of a border wall. We ask for additional boots on the ground, and we ask for the latest technology so that we can detect those illegal entrants, so we can stop them at the border before they enter our neighborhoods. Sí, Pedro, lo que hemos visto en la patrulla fronteriza es un incremento de un porcentaje bien alto que no habíamos visto antes. Si consideramos los números de febrero a mayo de este año, hemos pescado más de 600,000 personas en la frontera del sur. Si comparamos esos números con el año pasado, durante esos 4 meses, el año pasado fueron 98,000 personas que arrestamos en la frontera. So, sí estamos viendo muchos arrestos de la gente que está cruzando ilegalmente. Ahora, acerca del ánimo de los agentes de la patrulla fronteriza, pues es un trabajo muy difícil, y cuando te quitan los recursos para hacer tu trabajo, el ánimo de los agentes se va a bajar, y es algo que hemos visto desde que se paró la construcción del muro. Hemos visto que el ánimo de los agentes se ha bajado mucho. No solamente eso, pero hemos estado viendo un incremento del arresto de los ilegales que cruzan con récords criminales. Y estamos hablando de crímenes muy, muy serios que estamos viendo cruzando la frontera. En varios sectores de la frontera, como en Laredo, hemos visto el incremento de más del 1000% de la gente que se está arrestando con récords criminales. Y obviamente eso significa un peligro más alto para los agentes, y el ánimo sí se está bajando. Y esperamos que pueda haber cambios y que manden los recursos y que se acabe la construcción del muro fronterizo. Gracias, Pedro.
I'm sorry. If it's alright. Is this the first, like you said, it's specific to these 3,100 acres? Does the lawsuit have the possibility of, being applied, if it's favorable in other parts of Texas as well?
That's correct. In our lawsuit, we asked for declaratory and injunctive relief. So if we're successful on those grounds, basically it would compel the federal government to spend those dollars, and at minimum would require the president to not divert those appropriated dollars to other sources other than the specific intent by which the law required those dollars to be spent. So in the 2019 Consolidated Appropriations Act, which was an actual budget passed by Congress, it basically said very clearly in the language, and this is in our lawsuit, that these dollars cannot be used anything but for the construction or rehab or reconstruct in the RGV sector. So we have other basis for the lawsuit, but in terms of our relief, we're not asking for compensatory relief. We're just asking for injunctive and declaratory relief that says very clearly the president cannot ignore duly appropriated dollars from a Congress, and in terms of injunctive relief to basically stop this idea of terminating all these contracts where builders are ready to go to finish the 750 miles.
So just to be clear, these are no funds that came from the Department of Defense. These are funds appropriated for the building of the home.
That is correct. So just to be very clear, over the course of the 4 years of the Trump administration, $5 billion was appropriated for the Congress in 4 different consolidated appropriation acts, so budgets. And in 2019, the RGV sector was included in a large piece of that capital that is being unspent. And so the lawsuit is to basically prevent that from being diverted to other locations.
We're focusing on this area. Approximately how much a border wall would be needed to secure this area?
So just 2 miles. So the acreage you see here is structured like a rectangle, basically. The Rio Grande is probably about 1.5 miles in that direction. The area where you turned off of the state highway is the beginning of our property. Once you see the Wagner oil lease, you may have seen that sign. The wall is actually a little bit further away from the river that you'll see in other parts of the southern border. But the request basically is on 2 miles that's stretched. The Corps of Engineers is the actual federal agency that has the money in the account, and is the one that is the counterparty that works with, say, private ranchers and farmers or state agencies like ours. But the engineering proposal is to complete 2 miles along this way. And as Hector said, this allows the thinkers at the Border Patrol to target where not only the traffic flows are occurring, to create a sense of order there, but to be able to target the cartels where we know are creating a lot of pressure, whether it's the drug trade or the sex trade, which is now one of the faster growing crimes that we're seeing in the state of Texas. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.